In the cold, tense silence of the 23rd floor, every eye locked on the single dad standing near the glass wall, Daniel Hayes, holding a worn beige backpack that looked far too small against the towering corporate world around him, when suddenly the CEO's sharp voice sliced through the room like ice. "Security, search his bag, now." The words froze the entire floor, and even Daniel's 7-year-old daughter Emma, who had been clutching his sleeve with innocent trust, felt the air shift around her as if something terrible had just been set in motion. But before anyone could react further, Daniel closed his eyes for a brief second because he knew exactly what was inside the bag, nothing but the things he carried to hold his life together. A lunchbox reused for years, Emma's pink gloves, a stack of resumes, and a tiny Christmas ornament Emma had made for him out of cardboard, saying, "You're the best dad ever." The emotional weight began rising right there, barely 30 seconds into the moment, when this proud, exhausted father whispered to his daughter, "It's okay, sweetheart," trying to shield her from humiliation, even though his own heart was cracking under the pressure. The security officers stepped forward, but the room wasn't watching them. They were watching the CEO, Victoria Lane, whose face was unreadable, icy, almost mechanical, as if she believed Daniel was some kind of threat, rather than a desperate single dad hoping for a job interview in her company. The hook tightened as the officers opened his bag, spreading its contents on the polished table, and Emma, seeing her handmade ornament being handled like suspicious evidence, whispered shakily, "Daddy, did we do something wrong?" That single trembling question softened even some of the harshest executives nearby. Yet Victoria stood stiff, unmoving, her arms crossed, her judgment unforgiving. Daniel tried to stay calm, tried to maintain dignity even as shame burned across his face and the humiliation rose like fire inside him. The officers inspected everything, finding nothing. Of course they found nothing, but just as they were about to report back, the sliding doors opened behind the CEO, and a refined older woman stepped out, leaning lightly on a cane. Her presence was calm but powerful. She was Victoria's mother, Eleanor Lane, the woman who founded the company decades ago with her late husband. And the moment she saw Daniel and little Emma standing beside that scattered backpack, her expression dramatically shifted, her eyes widened, her breath caught, and something in her face melted with a shocking familiarity that immediately rippled tension across the entire room. The room fell even more silent as Eleanor slowly approached, her cane tapping softly against the marble floor, and she studied Daniel's face with a strange mixture of disbelief and deep, rising emotion, the kind that trembles quietly before breaking open. Then she finally spoke, her voice cracking just enough to make everyone freeze. "Victoria, stop this at once." The CEO's icy confidence faltered for the first time, and she turned sharply, confused. As her mother continued, "You ordered security to search this man's bag. This man?" She pointed at Daniel as if she recognized him from a place only her heart remembered. The employees looked at one another, unsure whether they were witnessing the unraveling of authority or the unveiling of a secret. Daniel, still protecting Emma behind him, felt completely lost, unable to understand why this elegant, older woman looked at him as though she had known him her whole life. Eleanor took a steadying breath, her eyes glistening, and said quietly, "Victoria, this man saved my life." The entire room gasped. Even Daniel's posture wavered. He had no idea what she meant, until Eleanor continued softly. 3 years ago, when I collapsed outside St. Mary's shelter, everyone walked past me. Everyone except him." Daniel's mind flashed back to the freezing winter evening when he had been carrying groceries for the shelter families and found an elderly woman unconscious near the curb. He had covered her with his coat, called an ambulance, and stayed beside her until help came, even missing the last bus home, where Emma had waited for hours with a volunteer. He had never known her name. Eleanor's voice strengthened with emotion. "This man carried me to the ambulance with his own hands. And when the doctors said my chances weren't good, he held my hand, a complete stranger, telling me I wasn't alone." Daniel swallowed hard, stunned. because he never expected that moment to return to him like this. The employees stared at the CEO, who stood frozen, the truth breaking her stern shell piece by piece. Eleanor turned to her daughter, her voice both loving and firm. "You judged him without knowing who he is, and you humiliated him in front of his child." Victoria's face finally fell with guilt as she looked at Emma's frightened eyes. Eleanor then turned back to Daniel, and her tone softened into something maternal. "Young man, I owe you a debt I can never repay, but I will start today." She placed a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder and smiled warmly. "And she reminds me of my own daughter at that age." The room exhaled, the tension dissolving as Victoria stepped forward, humbled, apologetic in a way her employees had never witnessed. "Mr. Hayes, I was wrong," she murmured. "I'm deeply sorry." Daniel nodded slowly, still overwhelmed, but Emma, sweet, innocent Emma, stepped out from behind her father and softly said, "It's okay. My daddy always helps people. He says that's what good people do." The pure honesty in her little voice melted. Whatever coldness remained in the room, Eleanor smiled, wiping a tear. "Daniel Hayes," she announced clearly, "you're hired, effective immediately. Not as an applicant, but as our new Community Impact Director." Gasps rippled again. This was a senior position. Daniel's breath caught, and his knees nearly gave way, because this job meant stability, a future, a home for Emma. Victoria, now genuinely remorseful, extended her hand. "I hope you'll allow us to make this right." Daniel hesitated, but then slowly shook her hand, choosing forgiveness over resentment, because he wanted his daughter to learn kindness, even from pain. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, Eleanor leaned in and whispered to Daniel, "Your kindness saved me once. Let us lift your life now." Daniel held Emma close, his eyes full, his heart steady, and for the first time in years, he felt the weight of struggle finally begin to lift. The story ended not with bitterness, but with healing, because compassion remembered always returns, and sometimes the world freezes not out of fear, but because of the shock of unexpected goodness that breaks through even the coldest walls.